So, when he's fully shattered, what can he do? The question is, do you want to allow yourself to be fully shattered? That's a question. And many things that don't work out in your early life, you will see later on, it is a great blessing. There are many ways to look at this. Let me tell you this. This happened in 1941. This is just when the Nazi movement was building up in Germany and in some parts of Europe. So one day in Austria, a bunch of German soldiers came, broke into the homes, the Jewish family, a rich family, they broke the home and took away the adults, everything was robbed. And these two children, a 12-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy were taken away. They were taken to a railway station. This is the month of November end, December kind of time, when it's becoming very cold. So they were kept in the railway station for 3 days because the trains did not come. Boys, little boys being boys, they started playing football. So they were playing football and then suddenly the train came. The train is not a passenger train, it's a cargo train, the goods train. So when the train came, the soldiers came and rushed everybody into the wagons which are there. Everybody got in and the little boy and the girl also got in, but the little boy forgot to wear his shoes. He left his shoes outside and they pushed him into the wagon. So without shoes he came. His sister, a 12-year-old girl, saw her kid brother coming without shoes and she got mad with him. She held him by the ear, boxed his ears, scolded him nicely, slapped him and said, "You idiot, already we are in enough trouble, now you come without shoes." Because in Germany in winter, no shoes means you may lose your feet. So she's angry about that. In the next station, the boys and girls were separated. After 4 years, after the war was over, she came out of the concentration camp to find 17 members of her family, including her little brother, all had vanished. No records, no sign of them, they just evaporated. At that time, the only thing that bothered her was the last few things that she said to her little brother. She loves her brother, but the last few things that she said to him were such terrible things, it rang in her mind and troubled her. These are the last things I told my brother and after that I'm never going to see him, he's gone. So she took a vow, if I speak to anybody in my life, I will speak in such a way, if this is my last word, I will not regret. This one thing transformed her life in such a way. She went on to United States, she died in 2006. She did some phenomenal work, built a hospital somewhere near Chicago, I think. She lived a fruitful life. I'm saying, even if you're put through the most horrible situations, either you can come out using that experience as a better human being, or you can use the experience to become a horrible mess. So whenever something hurts you, there are two options. You can either become wounded or you can become wise. This is the choice. The more things hurt you early on in your life, the wiser you should have become, isn't it? But unfortunately, most people become wounded. This is simply because they just need an excuse to turn their own intelligence against themselves, that's all. Especially if the world around you turns against you, is it not very, very important that your intelligence stands up for you?
If you are asked to meditate in freezing temperature, how would you feel? I can hear some of you say, Oh, what are you saying? I already meditate in freezing temperatures. Alright, you meditate in freezing temperature. But do you meditate with only a thin piece of cloth covering your whole body? And do you also keep your doors and windows open to let the biting wind enter your house while you meditate? Now you're like, why would I do that? No, you don't have to do that. But this is what they do in Zen monasteries. Zen monasteries are located in the coldest regions of Japan. So very early in the morning, at around 3 a.m. or so, all the monks have to be present in the meditation hall and practice their meditation. As I told you, that their bodies have only a very thin piece of cloth covering it, and the doors and windows are kept open to let the biting wind in. So these monks have to meditate in such harsh environment. You may be wondering, why do they do that? I'm going to answer this question in this talk. Could you tell me what is the greatest obstacle in self-realization? What is it really that prevents you from knowing your divine infinite nature? It is the ego in you. It is the I thought. The I that you keep repeating all through the day, that is what I'm talking about. That is what is the root of your bondage. That is what is the root of all your problems and suffering. If you look closely at your life, you would find that this ego is made up of two main patterns. One, it craves for pleasure, and two, it resists pain. So this ego in you does two things. It craves for pleasurable experiences and avoids experiences which it thinks would cause pain and suffering. So what can you really do to go beyond the ego and experience your blissful infinite nature, which is independent of what happens or doesn't happen in this world of forms? So what can you really do? Just do the opposite of what this ego makes you do. Ego craves for pleasure, you stop craving for pleasure. Ego resists pain, you stop resisting pain. Accept what happens gracefully. When you accept what happens gracefully, you go deeper within yourself. At that very moment, you get in touch with your infinite nature. But the acceptance of what happens in your life must be total. Total acceptance means it must be unconditional. There shouldn't be any ifs and buts in it. When something bad happens with you, don't resist. And this is not to say that you can't take any action. Far from it. When you accept what happens, you get empowered. Because as I told you, you get in touch with the universal intelligence. And then what is needed to be done, you do it. But that action of yours will be empowered action. That action won't be a reactive action. It would be right response coming from the deeper part of you. Coming from the real you. And if no action is needed, you wouldn't do anything. If some words need be spoken, they will come out of your mouth. So acceptance is the key. People have experienced their true nature, their infinite nature, when everything that they had identified with was taken away from them. their house, their car, all their belongings, their partner left them. They had nothing then to identify with. And they accepted this wholeheartedly. And this broke the shell of the ego. And when this happened, a peace which beggars all description, a peace which passes all understanding, flooded their whole being. They also didn't know where this peace is coming from. Up until now, they had thought that things and people were the cause of their happiness and peace in their lives. But now they had nothing, literally nothing, and they were experiencing such incredibly alive peace. This was beyond their understanding. It's only when they read about this in their scriptures, and it's only when they met as spiritual masters could they know that they had experienced the spiritual awakening. They had become enlightened. So here, what was the cause of their enlightenment? The acceptance of what happened in their life. Now you will understand why the monks in Zen monasteries meditate in such harsh environment. By meditating like this, they try to break the shell of the ego. They inflict conscious suffering upon themselves, and this breaks the shell of the ego. I don't recommend this at all. The experiences of your life are enough to break this shell of the ego. You don't have to meditate keeping your doors and windows open in biting cold. And this alone was the reason why monks in olden times would wander from place to place. They would bag their arms. Some people would say such biting things to them, such cruel and unkind things, which they had to accept. They would not react, but would accept that as the will of the Lord. Bless that person who said those unkind remarks and leave the place. So what they were really doing? They were going through suffering consciously. As I told you, you don't have to do any such thing. Don't become a masochist. Just remain conscious and aware when life throws challenges at you, which it does every now and then. If you can remain conscious in the midst of an extremely difficult situation, this will break the shell of the ego and make you experience your divine, infinite nature.